Grant, hello.
Hey,
Dan was saying, "Oh, I still look like a cop," and I'm like, "Not just any cop. You look like a cop on Reno 911."
That's right.
nice.
Yeah,
How are
somebody
you
sent me a
today?
link to actually the guy you're thinking of, and he's got his whole bio on there. It's hilarious. That's one of those shows that it's so funny that I can't watch it. It makes me physically like uncomfortable. Same with The Office. Michael on The Office.
It took me a while to get over that but then I realized like that's just really good entertainment. Like if it's making me feel something, then geez, what else do we want to be when we're entertained? Now, if it's like, but I get that, like, because I used to be the same way, but I don't know why I didn't purposely change. I just started to accept that, these guys are power dorks and that makes me uncomfortable. So maybe now it doesn't make me uncomfortable anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'll talk to my therapist about it. So
Yeah. Ask your
uh,
therapist. That's not a question for this podcast. That's a different podcast.
uh-huh.
Grant, how are you?
Oh, great. Yeah, just working on crypto stuff as always.
No shit.
Yeah, what a surprise, right?
I mean, I don't know, I know you, but I don't know your daily life habits and, everything you do. So
It's just a non-ending foray into the various different things that are going on, and keeping abreast of what's happening. Big news today, the World Bank announcing that they're going to do carbon trading on Chia. So that's a thing.
That's something. Well, that's a whole new conversation that we didn't even unpack, like the things needed to get to that conversation in the last conversation. But yeah, who knows?
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. So let me fire it off. Welcome to The Third Coin, a podcast that, talks about everything crypto and hypothesizes someday on what could indeed be the third coin. But before we ever get to the third coin, we're going to talk a lot about what is crypto, why crypto, well, the first two coins, and what crypto means to the world, and just try to help people understand what all this stuff means and how it's going to affect them, because it's not going away. And that's our belief. So welcome, everyone. And today, of course, it's myself, Louis May. I'm the founder of Hammersport Marketing. We have Dan Mueller. Say hi, Dan.
Hello.
Dan is an IT professional, has been in information technology for quite some time. And then we also have Grant Cermak. Hello, Grant.
Hello.
And Grant is the founder of an information technology company. And Grant, just elaborate really quickly on that, just to say hi and who you are.
Sure. CEO of Iralast. I've been developing technology for 20-something years. Lately, been very engaged in helping companies get to production, scaling in production, and also companies that are engaging in using blockchain technology as a fundament of whatever technology that they're trying to build on top of that. So trying to engage with companies that are using crypto in a meaningful way instead of just crypto speculation.
Awesome. That's why I was so excited about starting this podcast with you guys, is because every time I talk to you guys, I learn so much, and I have a feeling that this isn't going away. Plus, I love technology, and this is my opportunity to get closer to it through you guys. So thank you very much for doing this with me. I know I came up with a couple of things that I wanted to talk about today, but it's not going to always necessarily be what you guys want to talk about. But I thought I'd just fire it off to get right into it, because it'll lead to the next thing that'll lead to the next thing. Okay with you guys?
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, and I haven't even gone through and made the big list of all the things, but I was curious to know, and just go all the way back to the beginning of Bitcoin. Like, why Bitcoin? Like, what were they thinking? And I know that I'd like to hear from both of you what other people think is the reason for Bitcoin. And then I'd like to hear what your opinion is like when this happened in the late 2010. I mean, they must have been working on it sometime around then. And then when it came to fruition, what were they thinking? Why did they do this? Is it what we all think it is, or was it just some other reason? Who?
My understanding of it is that there was kind of an ethos around crypto punks, cypher punks, and like being very unsatisfied with the way that money was centralized. And so there was some work around digital money and how money could be decentralized and taken out of the hands of central authorities and made to be something that was sort of peer to peer. And that sort of an idea, there was dissatisfaction, I think, with some of the ways that central banks were managing funds, and that there was a ever sort of increasing pile of the money and inflation, and that it was better to sort of have a stable currency, or a currency that was not in the hands of people who could just arbitrarily increase the money supply. So to my recollection, when I first heard about it, that was sort of what people were saying about it. And I know that came out of some other projects that had failed previous to that really didn't have the right sweet spot mix of underlying technology that sort of made Bitcoin successful. And when I caught wind of it, it was a lot of dissatisfaction with the Federal Reserve in particular, and all fiat currencies, and sort of led to people referring to money, traditional money, U.S. dollars or whatever, as fiat, as opposed to crypto.
For
so
sure.
that was sort of when terminology started getting solidified, that people would refer to this base currency or this shit currency as fiat.
Well, and I mean, I was in the gold industry in 2003 and 2004 and 2005. So we were talking about this stuff amongst my prospects and my clients because they were the gold fans. The gold was at $300 an ounce those days, and the main people we talked to believed exactly what you're saying. They hated fiat currency. They thought that America was going to fall and that the banks were going to fail, and they wanted to have gold in supply. And I think that now it's becoming the awareness level of the general population is starting to increase amongst people.
Absolutely.
It's more common that people now understand, wait a second, the Federal Reserve isn't the US government. Like nobody knew that, or so few people knew that, and so few people still know that. I think it's a huge deal. And to just elaborate on your point, Grant, we're sick of the people who control the money controlling it for themselves. It's not only do they just control it, but they're not controlling it altruistically. They're controlling it for their own benefit.
They're robbing us. They're literally stealing from anybody who saves money. And the word fiat just means a command or order, right? Fiat is money because we say it's money, and you better do it. The Genesis block of Bitcoin, the very first block, has some words encoded in it. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. And that is a whole conversation right there. That identifies who Satoshi Nakamoto is. It's a really big clue, because those words only appeared in print in 10 newspapers, and they were all in Europe. I mean, I believe.
Can you say those words? What are those? What's that quote again?
Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This is back in 2009. It was a headline of I forget what newspaper, but there it is. It's almost famous in the crypto community. I mean, there's people who like have Etsy art and posters of it and stuff. It's the Times of London.
Because let's just, I mean, we all know this because of our age, but there's some that might be listening that don't know. It's like the bailout happened, or the market crashed, right?
This is what happens. These greedy bastards get into derivatives, and they start doing stuff that is illegal or should be illegal, but they bribe people so it isn't, or they have loopholes, or do something in a holding company or in a shell company, and
they did one thing and then bet on themselves in another place.
Right, and they leverage themselves to the point where when they finally lose, they don't just lose what they have; they lose more than they can afford to pay. So who pays? The taxpayer. The taxpayer pays because they get the government to bail them out because they're too big to fail. And as somebody who pays taxes reluctantly, but I do it because I don't want to go to jail. I'm sick of this shit. I don't want to bail out these greedy, thieving bastards anymore. And
And
I
we
don't
were
think
only
anybody
told they were
does.
too big to fail. Like, what would have really happened if we hadn't have bailed out the banks? Maybe it would have just been 100,000 people just all of a sudden owned their homes outright.
Right.
Like, what's wrong
So
with that? Like, they screwed up.
that's this is what crypto is for. Crypto is a means. I mean, the original white paper of Bitcoin was peer-to-peer electronic cash. Bitcoin is nothing resembling its original, what it was supposed to be. It's evolved and morphed into something else, and um, but it was supposed to be a way for, if there's a limited supply. 21 million Bitcoins will ever be created, and no more. So you can't artificially increase it. The bankers can't say, oh, well, we have $1 that in our deposit account, so we're going to loan out $9, fractional reserve lending, how that
Yep.
works. And
Yep.
it was a way for us to be our own banks, for the people to be their own banks. And that's revolutionary. It's a
In the
revolutionary
21st
concept.
century, instead of us holding gold, instead of because you can't get gold to somebody across the world without
Right.
shipping it and then losing some of its value.
Well, America, I think one of the reasons we were so prosperous, and looked at as a bastion of freedom and opportunity, was because we had real money. When this country was founded, we have silver and gold, and it's defined in our Constitution. That's what money is. And through incremental changes in our laws, that money, okay, now this money is represented by a note that's a reserve, payable on demand, silver bearer notes or whatever. You can take this piece of paper to a bank and they will give you this much silver. And now what we have are IOUs. Those are IOUs. And I don't know, it's devolved to the point where we have are useless pieces of paper that are only worth something because the government says they're worth something, and they demand that you pay your taxes in that form. And they also, the petrodollar, are the American military backing Saudi Arabia, and demanding, and OPEC saying, you have to pay for, hi, Norway, if you want oil, you have to pay for it with US dollars. That's why the United States dollar is the reserve currency of the world, because we're
It's a
bullies.
stranglehold on the entire world.
It is. It is. And I don't blame non-Americans for not liking it, because it's a shitty system and it's unfair.
Yeah.
Crypto
I was
is an
thinking
opportunity
about
to
it
change all
like,
that.
I was thinking about it like, this is my money. What if I called up my bank and said, I'd like to destroy my money? I have $100 and I'd like for that $100 to cease existing, please.
Wow.
Like, what would they do? They couldn't, they'd just be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, how do you get money? What if you just wanted to do that? And I don't know why I was thinking about that, because like I could take the $100 out and burn it, but that's illegal.
Well, you can do that with crypto. You can basically, and there's a
That's
lot
why
of
I was
coins that are
thinking
doing
about that.
Yeah.
Like you could do that with crypto, because
And
it's
some
really your
coins
money.
do. They're like, we have, 1 billion coins, but we're going to burn, X million per day until we get down to this other number. And then people are motivated. Oh, well, they're creating scarcity, so what I have is going to be worth more. I don't know. There's a lot of, I'm not sure that's really valid, but
I don't know either. No, either. I just was kind of
people
like,
do all kinds of tricks to boost the value of their currencies. And I don't know how much of it's legit or not.
sure. So where do we go with that? I mean, I just wanted that because it's a good introduction to like, so then what was Bitcoin used for in the beginning? How did it work?
It was magic internet money. Nobody really knew what it was for. And, Bitcoin Pizza Day is the day we celebrate every year. There's a guy who spent the equivalent of, is it hundreds of millions or is it billions
No, we figured it
now?
out. $6 billion.
Yeah, 6 billion. A couple of pizzas, and beer.
And he
And when I
literally said that it was what we looked up was it was $10,000 in Bitcoin over a period of time. He couldn't obviously pay Domino's or pay the liquor store, so he found other people on the internet that would take the Bitcoin. They negotiated what it would probably be worth. Like he probably tried to negotiate as much as he could, and they agreed to spend $30 of their real money, call up Pete's Domino's, and have him get him the pizzas, and he sent them the Bitcoin.
And now they're saying, what is it, Grant, that they recommend that everybody have at least 0.025
Yeah, I think that was the last amount that I heard. I think I don't know. In my opinion, it's a little disingenuous to sort of like fault someone for using whatever currency. I mean, right now.
Oh yeah, I can't blame them.
Let's just kind of put this in perspective.
Please.
So you could do the same sort of comparison of anything for currencies, money, assets, whatever. You can say, well, if I were to forward cast whatever it is, we're always buying and selling assets. Anytime you sort of don't sell an asset, you're actively rebuying it. You're saying, well, I'd rather have this asset than the cash or whatever equivalent that I could swap it into. So, when that was first done, I mean, he could have bought a pizza with it, and the next day he could have turned around and bought some more Bitcoin.
Everybody else might have thought he was getting a great deal for his Bitcoin,
because he got something for
pizza.
Nothing. Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Yeah, he traded these magic internet points for money. And I don't know, I felt the same way about like NFTs when I first heard about them too. It's like, okay, I can buy whatever, some image of Nyan Cat or whatever, and it's $9 million or whatever was going on. And it's the same kind of stuff. It's people are willing to pay whatever they're willing to pay for stuff. And as time progresses, then the true value of things sort of become apparent. And many would still say that sort of this Bitcoin craze and all this is not real, and it's not going to be worth anything in the long term. I've heard many traditional financial people say that. So it's not
we don't
clear.
know. Yeah, absolutely, because it's too new, and also with the advent of quantum computing, that code might not be safe.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I think it's I don't know what we're going to do for links or whatever, but it's interesting to hear Diffie Hellman sort of speak about that and like what is really at stake with quantum computing. There's quite a bit that really isn't at stake with quantum computing. So and even if that were the case, it's like it doesn't invalidate the ledger that's already been produced, right?
Okay.
Because you could say, let's say that there's some day when sort of a computer is able to break encryption and whatever, you still have a snapshot of the blockchain at whatever point in time and saying, here's what everybody owned. And then at that point, you can sort of upgrade the network to something else.
Okay.
And a lot of the cryptographic standards really aren't, on the block of, they don't have their head on the block if quantum encryption really came into play. So I don't know.
Nobody does. It's not even a usable technology yet, right?
Even theoretically and mathematically, I think this is stuff that's probably a little outside the bounds of this conversation. But like,
sure,
I wouldn't say that sort of, there's a day coming where, all crypto sort of head is on the chopping block, and then sort of it's up for grabs of like what was actually encrypted at the time. But
why won't they just use that new technology to then work it into their?
Well, because you'd have to fork have to fork the chain at that point.
Yeah.
That's the key, and that's why this isn't as big of a deal. Like I wouldn't say like, oh, someday in the future, like somebody's going to crack all crypto, and then this is a problem. It sort of is in the fact that you maybe in some sense, I don't know, could get access to all private keys, but then again, you could sort of re-encode the chain in some new standard and say, well, everybody that had this coin still has this coin, and airdrop it into this other space, and you can reclaim it. This sort of stuff happens frequently when chains restart and have to move over and reset or do something. So this is stuff that's occurred in the past. It's not insurmountable. It would certainly be disruptive, but wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world, in my opinion. I guess I've seen enough chains restart and sort of restore people because of some problem that's happened. So it's not like these problems are insurmountable. This is all just code and technology.
There's been problems with crypto coins where people probably were a little scared, like, oh, shoot, something happened. But then it's all been restored and fixed. Those problems have been.
Well, I mean, sometimes the fix is not what people wanted, and then that's where you have splits in the community, right?
Okay.
That's a classic example of like ETH, ETH in its early days sort of had an issue. They got hacked, a bunch of money got lost. And, people who said, hey, we shouldn't be fixing these kinds of problems for people who didn't properly secure their keys, should it, properly lose their money when such things occur. And there was another part of the community that said, this is going to hurt us in the long term. Let's just fix this, because if we don't, then, there'll be a lack of confidence in using Ethereum. So they fixed it. And that was the original sort of ETH, the ETH Classic split was around that.
That was the example you used last time too. But how about another fork example, Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin, and then the fork off of Bitcoin Cash to Bitcoin SV with Craig Fake Satoshi Wright, bastard.
Mm-hmm. And then, with his goal on the SV chain to say, I want to reclaim coins that don't ever move, that aren't really, going anywhere, or whatever.
Like Len Sassaman's coins, the real Satoshi Nakamoto.
Well, so that was my next thing that I wanted to talk about, because once we get these things out of the way, then I never have to ask about them again, because I want to hear that's why I'm doing this. Is I can go get this information from other people, Grant, Dan, but I don't trust those other people, and I trust you guys, and I want to show the world that they should probably trust you guys as well, because you have a great way of, because we're all from Minnesota, and we have a great way of dealing with the world. We're really confident, and we almost use absolutes sometimes because we know how ridiculous it is to absolute anything. And it's like a test. It's like, if this guy really falls for my absolute, then I kind of know how he works. But anyways, so what is this? Who is this Satoshi Nakamoto guy? And who do other people think it is? And then I want to hear, who do you guys think it is? Dan?
It's been a matter of great debate, and really it's been something that a lot of people have wanted to know who, because there are a number of coins that are ostensibly controlled by him, that have, that he is believed owns the private keys for a substantive number of the initial coins that were mined in the early days. So this pseudonym, the Satoshi Nakamoto, is sort of, the guy who was on all the Usenet groups and all the discussions around Bitcoin, and, is arguably the one who programmed a bunch of it. I've seen a lot of different theories over time. There was one article that I really liked that sort of made a strong case for it being Len Sassaman. And to me, that's sort of been like, it ended it there for me. He's dead. Those coins died with him because he didn't really share the private keys, and that's the end of it. So yeah.
So who is Len Sassaman?
He was a cryptographer. He was a cypherpunk. He lived in Belgium. He lived in one of the 10 cities that got that newspaper, Chancellor on the Brink of Second Bailout for Banks. There are at least, all the timestamps match up with him working with his commits to the Bitcoin code base. Len Sassaman, I think, got the most compelling amount of evidence that indicates that he is the true Satoshi Nakamoto. Who is he? He's a guy. He was born in 1980. He died in July of 2011. He had issues with depression and mental health, and he took his own life. But strangely enough, or maybe not so strangely enough, one of his best friends and one of his roommates in San Francisco when he lived in the United States was Bram Cohen, the inventor of BitTorrent and the guy who invented the math that makes Chia possible, the proof of space and time crypto, which is new this year. And it's green, and it's completely different than anything else that's ever come before it.
Okay, interesting. Because I heard somebody once saying that if you look at the Japanese language, that Satoshi means central, and moto means agency. And then they kind of were like, well, what does Naka mean then? And so C blank A, that was their argument, is that if you look at what the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto means, and now I haven't fact checked or verified to learn if that actually means central intelligence agency, but is that a possibility in this realm?
It's almost certain that Satoshi Nakamoto is a moniker. It's a pseudonym. There is actually a Japanese guy named Satoshi Nakamoto, and there's those famous photos of him. He's like this 50-year-old confused-looking Japanese guy with a bedhead. It's like, whoa, what? Yeah. It's like, that's
am I famous now?
It's like, well, why are you bothering? What's Bitcoin?
Can I have some, please?
Poor guy, I don't think that's Satoshi Nakamoto any more than Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto. He's another guy who, Craig Wright claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto, and he's actually hoodwinked a bunch of people into believing that that's true. And
Okay.
and he's been sued and lost. Every way you can prove, that you are Satoshi Nakamoto, people have said, "All right, prove it. Sign this with your private keys, Satoshi." And he's like, "Oh, look, something shiny." He's
Okay.
just a grifter, and he's really, really a good grifter because he's fooled a bunch of people.
That's too bad.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's
yeah.
kind of takes place with every tech or
Well, what
new
bums me
thing in
out
the
is I,
world.
I I I liked Bitcoin Cash. Like I had some Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin Cash forked, which means I automatically had some free Bitcoin Cash. And what was the big argument? What was the holy war that separated the community? Right. The issue was the block size. Bitcoin Core, BTC, and Bitcoin Cash all go back to the same beginning. They're the same chain up until like July of 2017 or something like that, and then they split. And at that point, if you had a Bitcoin, you also had a Bitcoin Cash. And when they first came out, they were like valued at around $4,000. Bitcoin was higher than that, but it was a fork, so it was valued lower. Um, and then it went down, and then I bought a bunch of it when it was pretty cheap, and then it went up. It was around $600, and I was in a good position. And then a split came because Craig Wright, the guy who claimed to be Satoshi, said, I know I'm Satoshi and I invented all this, but having had some time to reflect on it, I think these are some useful changes that we should have incorporated. So this is Bitcoin SV, Satoshi's Vision SV, and he
Okay.
forked off of Bitcoin Cash. And what he did is he destroyed the price. He took it. That fork took the price of Bitcoin Cash from 600 down to almost like under 300 overnight, and then even lower for a while. I think it finally just recovered up to about 600 again, whereas Bitcoin's at 60,000, 62,000. But yeah, his vision is I'm going to go steal Lens Bitcoin because I can now because I have this code in there that lets me claim
Wow. And he had
coins.
enough
Yeah.
followers that probably took the ride with him, huh?
Well, anybody can fork Bitcoin, and it's been done like I don't know 74 times or something stupid like that. But it doesn't mean that you're going to get people to adopt it or use it or support it by running full nodes. But yeah, he had enough personality to get some people to support the vision, and it's traded on some exchanges, and it has a value that's not zero. It's
So my last stupid question from a non tech understanding person: run a full node. What does that mean? Like why? Like how many Bitcoin forks then are running full nodes at this point?
So full node is it's a part of the network. So, any network, and I think if you're trying to understand what a network is, you can think of, like phones or, any other thing that's able to interconnect. So blockchains are similar to that, and in that they're having a conversation. The conversation that they're having is about the next state of the blockchain. A full node is one which has the entire state of the blockchain from the Genesis block all the way to the current state.
Okay.
That's what it means for it to be full. So full node just means it has the entire database, it has the entire chain history, and that it's a node that's participating and is reachable by other, peers that want to be able to coordinate on the next state of the blockchain. Typically, a full node is also participating in the ability to create the next state of the chain. So that would be, they're mining or farming or whatever it is that's, referred to on that particular chain that allows you to advance the state of the blockchain. So a full node is that.
It's one that is people are actively using it for transactions, whatever those are, and then actively mining for the next block to record those transactions.
Not necessarily. You can be participating as a full node and never create a single transaction, like personally, like as whatever that node operator. It just means that like you're allowing for whatever state advancement is, whatever's in the mempool, whatever is being proposed to be in the next block. You're ready to sort of help do that and also replicate the database, right? You're keeping a copy of it so that somebody else that wants to start a full node, they start asking you for blocks. They start asking you for, the history of the database, and then you have to supply it. So you have this exchange of data that's happening.
So it's just the network exists then, because if any of these networks exists, then it's not really one person sitting back holding on to this data waiting for somebody to ask for it. It's the network owns the data or has the data open to anyone who wants to take part in the network.
Yeah, and the number of full nodes is important, because if that number ever drops to 0, then the blockchain ceases to exist. So the greater that number is, the less likely that chain could ever stop functioning or stop existing, because it's the level to which the data has been replicated on n number of machines.
Okay, which for Bitcoin is a ton of people running full nodes then.
Yeah, I think I hear these numbers get thrown around a bit. I don't know exactly where these things are particularly published, or there's different metrics around what it means to be like a good full node. Some say you've got to have a particular set of open ports, so that other nodes can reach you. There's a bunch of things that sort of go into qualifying what, a full node is or what a good full node is. I think Bitcoin, number has been thrown around, something around 60,000. And the level of decentralization is sort of a metric of how strong the crypto is, particularly, or decentralized.
Okay. Well, and that leaves another topic for conversation, I think, is the decentralization of things, because I know I've heard from both of you that like what used to be is not necessarily so anymore, and that some of them moving away. But Grant, I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of bring up what you said was some new current events that are taking place right now.
Right. So, when you're asking me what am I working on today, it's just, this morning I was checking out Bloomberg Financial. There was, a live streamed conference that's going on, and they were talking about, what is currently happening. And one of the currencies that I keep track of is Chia. And they're talking about how they are working with the World Bank to tokenize carbon trading and to allow for sort of reconciliation of carbon credits that exist in different markets via Chia. So it's a big project, and very, very exciting news, kind of for a big use case for crypto. A lot of crypto to date has been used for currency speculation. Like there are lots of different tokens that are being created with dubious value. There's been ideas around what crypto can be used for, but there hasn't been a lot of real world use cases or companies that have launched with Bitcoin as like a strong underpinning for, how they produce their technology. So this is fairly large news for, all things in the crypto world, as, if this proceeds with the World Bank, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. It means that there's a new use for crypto other than just.
Right. And there's been a lot of talk about this happening, right? So if you look at like the stock market, for instance, we don't really have good tokenization of cryptographically strong tokenization of stocks. So you could think, stocks are like a no-brainer example for how you could use cryptocurrency, right? Why wouldn't you have sort of, the representation of ownership in a company by a certain number of tokens, right? And so if you want a share of the company, you would buy one of those tokens, and then you would have it, and then it confers voting rights or whatever. So you could easily cryptographically prove that you own a certain set of tokens, and then you could vote and you could do all kinds of things. So there have been quite a bit of talk about making stocks sort of be crypto backed, so that the stock market would sort of move into the crypto space. And that would allow for much faster settlement, right? When I settle a crypto trade,
there's a lot of businesses that would be adamantly against that happening then. Because there's billions of dollars. That's $1 billion industry of just settling stocks, isn't it?
Stock settlement is definitely something that has a traditional way that it works, and there are certain rules around it that allow for different types of shenanigans to occur. As far as like does somebody want or not want that, I think that there are certain companies that wouldn't want those shenanigans, yes. And would prefer that there be real representation of their shares, and that there not be ways to I don't know, produce counterfeit versions of their stock. So it seems like some might want it. There may be others that have a vested interest in those shenanigans and would not want that to occur. But I think there's lots of stuff like that goes on.
Okay. So what's the next?
So I would say that's like another good example of like a real world use case. I think any other digital asset tokenization is ripe for inclusion sort of in the next wave of how do we use blockchain, and that could be anything. It can be contracts. It can be things like land representation, instead of sort of having, these registrars that happen in government centers. Like there's no reason why you can't have, land ownership represented on chain and sort of passed around via chain. I think the real trouble here is that you have to have strong guards around this stuff to ensure that you don't errantly lose control of something that you hadn't intended to lose control of. So you've got to have, strong controls in place that sort of allow you to do things like clawback and have, time-based, rules around stuff. So I think that's where, the next wave of really getting stuff like this into crypto is having some programmability around it, because it can't just be as soon as you execute this one little bit, then this happens and sort of you lose track of your private key, then, sort of the world ends. Like you got to have a few other guards and controls in place. And I think, common banking has this, right? If your account suddenly gets hacked or something and you lose a bunch of money, you can go back, cry to the bank, say, hey, this was fraud, whatever. They can work with you to restore those funds. In crypto, that's not the case, right?
So crypto needs some human error safeguards.
It needs safeguards in general, yes. If it doesn't have that, it's sort of going to struggle, I think, with the adoption of like having real world use cases on there, because it's just not appropriate to sort of not have fail safes in place. Right. And so that's why I don't know about instantaneous settlement of trades, because you're still going to want to have some amount of time that says, well, wait a minute, this wasn't appropriate. Something was, faulty here. Somebody tried to do something erroneous. So let's, implement the safeguard to ensure that that doesn't occur. And so you still would have like this settling time. It's like, I wanted to do this trade. Everybody confirms that this all looks good on chain, and then sort of, presses the second button that says, yeah, I really want to do that.
Okay. Well, so, and then back to the World Bank thing a little bit and carbon trading. I haven't really heard much about Chia. Why Chia? Like, why is the World Bank? I mean, everybody knows about the World Bank. Why aren't they talking about this to Bitcoin or Ethereum, which is the two coins that everybody actually knows?
I think partially because there's nobody to talk to. I mean, it's not like Bitcoin is some centralized company. It's just this protocol that was created probably by some dude that's dead now. So, there may be spaces of, companies that are, providing professional services or whatever. But I think one of the reasons that, Chia is being considered for this is probably because it would look really bad if Bitcoin sort of wanted to trade carbon credits on something that's, dumping carbon into the atmosphere. I
think they estimate that Bitcoin uses more electricity than Scandinavia. Yeah.
Okay. So there'd be no way for them to trade carbon credits and actually have it be a carbon positive.
It's a PR problem if the market that you're choosing to trade and manipulate the carbon market is sort of a large contributor to, carbon problem.
So same reason they decided not to use the oil and gas market for it then.
Right.
So I think that's a component of it. It's, it's a marketing thing. It's an optic thing. Second, I think, Chia probably has some, good use case for actually making this work, so like they've done some advancements in the state of the art and technology. I don't know the particulars of how this market's going to work or like what's happening. This was a very early announcement. It's kind of said in a couple sentences. So if you ask me about the details of how this is all going to work, like I don't have any inside track on it. I just am sort of repeating something that was said. What seemed to sort of offhand, I was surprised to hear this morning.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, that was a lot. I really enjoyed this conversation. Do we need to go anywhere else to kind of wrap this up or, elaborate on some of the things we talked about here?
I don't think so. Great conversation as always. Always appreciate talking to you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. Dan, awesome to see you as well.
Louis.
So I'll just wrap this up. I'm Louis May. I'm a founder of Hammersport Marketing. I've been sitting here with Dan and Grant. I haven't had permission to say their last names yet, so I won't. But we've had a great time. This was another recording of the Third Coin podcast, and we're hoping to bring some more to you. As always, as usual, if you enjoyed this or found value from it, definitely press the follow and the share button and let other people know this is going on, because we'd love to have you listen.